All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating and honestly highly provocative 2022 essay by an author named Su Feng. This text completely flips traditional spirituality on its head. I mean, it demands something we almost never associate with the spiritual realm: strict, measurable, scientific rigor. We're going to look at why the author argues that treating self-cultivation as some mystical art is actually a recipe for failure, and how shifting to a scientific paradigm could, well, change absolutely everything about how we approach personal growth. To start off, think about this striking historical observation for a second. Throughout human history, millions of people have dedicated their entire lives to seeking immortality, striving to become Buddhas or practicing Qigong to get supernatural powers. But how many actually succeed? The text points out that the success rate is incredibly, almost unbelievably low. I mean, those who become immortals, very rare. Those who achieve true Buddhahood, very few. And those obtaining actual supernatural powers are just a drop in the bucket. Shui Feng asks us to really pause and consider this. Why are there so many seekers out there, but only a microscopic fraction who actually hit their goal? If you've ever tried a self-improvement method and felt like you were just guessing, getting absolutely nowhere, well, the author's core diagnosis is laid out perfectly in a single, powerful quote. The text identifies the exact root cause of this massive historical failure, and it's simply this. Seekers treat self-improvement as metaphysics. They treat it as something vague, mystical, and completely beyond the realm of physical laws. Shu Feng argues that, as long as we treat our spiritual development as some abstract, unquantifiable philosophy, we're entirely missing the mark. The assertion is bold. Self-improvement literally has to be treated as a science, not a metaphysical guessing game. To wrap our heads around this paradigm shift, we really need to contrast these two approaches side by side. On one hand, we have the traditional metaphysical approach. The author actually calls self-cultivation without science elusive thinking. It relies on vague concepts, unprovable theories, and honestly, a whole lot of wishful hoping. But on the other side, we have the rigorous scientific method. Science demands evidence. It demands repeatability. If you do X, Y absolutely should happen. And if it doesn't, well, the theory is wrong. The text is urging us to totally abandon the elusive thinking of the past and adopt a strictly scientific framework for our own life's progression. So the crucial point is understanding exactly what the scientific framework looks like in practice. The author breaks down the 3 elements of science required for any genuine self-improvement journey. Now, first, you need a definite purpose. Otherwise, the text notes, you're just like a leaf blown by the autumn wind in the wilderness. But once you have that purpose, step 1 is to find the law, basically getting a roadmap. Step 2 is to verify the law. You have to actually test it on yourself or others to prove it's correct and effective. If it fails the test, throw the map away, it's false. And finally, step 3, if the law is proven correct, you execute the method to reach your destination. It's a completely logical, step-by-step engineering process, but applied directly to human spirituality. Now, applying this strict scientific lens, the text makes a rather uncompromising critique of revered traditions. The author argues that the theories of Chinese immortality, like Taoism and Buddhism, fundamentally lack a scientific basis. The text impartially asks, are there laws? No. Is there evidence? It's rare. Is there a definite way? No. Shu Feng points out that while traditional teachings might claim there are 84,000 ways, or that all roads lead to Rome, scientifically speaking, 84,000 ways do not necessarily lead to your actual destination. Imagine walking blindly down an unverified path. You might end up doing the exact opposite of what you intended, drifting a million miles away from your actual objective. This rigorous critique extends directly into traditions like Zen Buddhism. The text uses the example of Shakyamuni Buddha, noting that after teaching for 49 years, he found that the Dharma just couldn't be expressed in words. This led to the creation of Zen, which is famously described as a transmission from heart to heart, like holding a flower and smiling. Now, while that is poetically beautiful, the author argues it deviates even further from scientific principles. The text poses the question, what exactly is Zen? What is the heart? Because it's totally impossible to give these concepts a scientific definition or to quantify them, they simply fail the test of a scientific method. And this critique goes way beyond religion to Chinese culture as a whole. Consider Wang Yangming's philosophy of mind. These are cornerstones of traditional thought: mind as principle, the unity of inner knowledge and action, and the extension of innate knowledge. The author looks at these and asks, okay, where are the scientific elements? Concepts like mind and innate knowledge just can't be measured or quantified. The text views these as ambiguous methods. Beautifully crafted, sure, but ultimately unscientific and therefore entirely unreliable for guaranteed self-improvement. Fascinatingly, the text applies this exact same scientific critique to modern political slogans. The author points to phrases like the China Dream and the Great Rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, arguing that these too lack scientific spirit and specific connotation. The text asks a very literal scientific question. Rejuvenation of what, exactly? Does it mean a return to historical practices like foot binding, a return to the tyranny of King Qin, or yin-yang divination? Because the phrase lacks a concrete, quantifiable scientific definition and a specific method, the author dismisses it as an impractical slogan. They actually call it a bowl of ecstasy soup, entirely devoid of scientific meaning. Now, consider this rapid-fire list of incredibly popular, highly revered practices. We've got sitting cross-legged, yoga, fasting, the training of qi, burning incense, chanting mantras, and even modern mindfulness and deep meditation. When the author subjects these to the scientific framework we discussed earlier, the conclusion is pretty startling. The text explicitly states that almost 100% of these methods have zero scientific content. They're labeled as just playing with concepts and engaging in senseless acts that have few benefits and many disadvantages. Why? Simply because they do not operate on verified, quantifiable laws. And this brilliantly illustrates the big pivot here. If all those traditional practices are out, what exactly are we aiming for? The text provides a remarkably clear, singular definition of the true purpose of self-cultivation. It's not about obtaining magical powers or flying through the air. It is simply to make life happy, joyous, free, and blessed. And to let life continue to sublimate, basically to elevate to a higher state. That is the concrete destination on our roadmap. Everything else, just a distraction. To actually reach that destination, Zhu outlines 3 specific, highly actionable methods that replace the chanting and the incense. First, repay your debts and end secular ties, which means resolving your earthly obligations. Second, make tangible contributions to accumulate merit. And third, perfect the non-material structure of your life. The author insists that, unlike vague metaphysical concepts, these 3 methods have crystal clear connotations. And crucially, staying right in line with the scientific theme, the text states these methods have to be constantly verified and advanced in a solid, methodical manner. You test them, you literally observe your life becoming more joyous and free, and then you proceed. Which brings us to our final thought. The author leaves us with a really stark warning. Self-improvement without science is just elusive thinking. If you rely on unverified metaphysics, you might spend years, decades, or literally your entire lifetime cultivating yourself, only to wake up and realize you're in the exact same place you started. So as you look at your own paths of growth, learning, or spirituality, I'm going to leave you with the text's ultimate provocative question. Are you practicing a science or just engaging in elusive thinking?